The hype for a new Pikmin game has always seemed to be driven by the tantalizing concept of perhaps getting a new Pikmin type or two. Each Pikmin game has, of course, had the classic primary color trio, but every game following the first has introduced two or more new Pikmin types to act as the stars of the show. Pikmin 2 introduced purple and white Pikmin, which were featured heavily in the game's marketing, and that game also introduced the downplayed bulbmin, which were a surprise third type found in the depths of that game's hardest places. Pikmin 3 phased out purple and white Pikmin from the main story, replacing them with rock and winged Pikmin, though our missing plant pals appeared in side modes. Bulbmin were, however, missing from the game entirely, though low-poly bulbmin models can be found unused in the game's files. Thus far, the developers of Pikmin appear to have had no interest in breaking this trend. We know that, for Pikmin 4, red, yellow, and blue Pikmin are coming back. They not only are seen in the gameplay screenshot we were given, but they also appear across the presentation announcing the upcoming title alongside Mr. Miyamoto. Even if all other types return, the marketing is likely still driven by the addition of a new Pikmin type or two, a momentous occasion that happens only about once every decade. But what could these new Pikmin types be? We've, after all, seen nothing about them, we've seen no gameplay showcasing them, no art, and no leaks. We don't even know what returning types are coming back outside of the core three. Any guess we make about new types would therefore seem to be entirely a shot in the dark. However, in today's video, we're going to take a look at why that may not be the case and how we may have already seen these new types or their ancestors before we even saw Pikmin 4's first trailer. My name is Vantage Emblem, and today, we're going to be looking at the unused concept art Pikmin types from Pikmin 3 and determining how plausible it would be for their designs to be used in Pikmin 4. Today, we're going to break down the origins of this concept art, go through each and every type, explain where they came from, what the reasoning behind them being cut from Pikmin 3's development would be, and then pivot over to Pikmin 4 to see if they still remain plausible. But before we get into that, I'd like to let you know that only 20.4% of you watching are subscribed. While I'm pleased this number has grown just a little recently, it's only around 1/5 of you. So if you want to, please go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. I do Pikmin content weekly here and Fire Emblem monthly, and 2023 is a big year for both of these series. That being said, that's up to you, and I'm going to stop stalling and get right into this video. First, let's start with the background. There have always been fan-made Pikmin types. I've made some, you've probably made some, you probably know someone who has made some. It's a fun thing to speculate about, and frankly, the Pikmin have such iconic designs and come in such a variety already, and in some great numbers already, that it just makes sense that we could see even more types. The fact that we've got at least 2 new types each game thus far has only added to this. There are, for this reason, Pikmin concepts everywhere. It was about last year when everything changed, when the holy grail of Pikmin concepts graced us. After 2 decades of seeing many new Pikmin types from the community, this image began circulating the internet. This image has been taken from the back of a notebook given out by Nintendo in Japan. According to Wikipedia, the trusty Pikmin wiki, it's a page of a notebook handed out at the 2014 Nintendo Game Seminar, featuring concept art from several Pikmin type-related ideas, including ones not making it into any of the games. The Nintendo Game Seminar was an event for students to learn about game development and to work together to make games. It's entirely plausible that Nintendo gave away special memorabilia at this event featuring concept art. Not only does it fit the theme of this event, game development, ridiculously well, but it is also confirmed to be far from the only special memorabilia given away at this event. Looking at this image, I still, however, have no way of definitively proving it as official. I don't have my hands on the book, but there are still a few clues that genuinely add to its case. First, the writing in the art is, as far as I can tell, genuinely made up of Japanese characters. I can't read much Japanese, but I know enough to be able to pick out some characters from the katakana and hiragana writing systems. The grid paper too is perfect for writing a Japanese script. Whatever it is, it seems to at least be authentically Japanese. Second, the art seems to have been properly printed in the book. While not at all impossible to do, it's just another step that a clout seeker would have to do just to fake this. And the thing is, third and most importantly, the art in this book just looks official. While that may seem rather subjective, I mean that it really looks official. The style of the art lines up incredibly well with other concept art we've seen from Pikmin 3. It matches the sketch-based style of the concept art that was used in our first look at the Copiates, including a first look at the ever-elusive character D, and it matches with the style of the concept art of the tropical forest map shown around E3 2012. Most notably, the rock Pikmin matched the style very closely. On that subject, this art nails not only the stylistic tendencies of Pikmin concept art, but also the little details of Pikmin art in general that really cement the style. From the way the elliptical eyes hang just over the face of the Pikmin, to the consistently potato-like way bulborbs are drawn, to the sparse way that the leaders are drawn that harkens back to the original Pikmin concept art, I'm left thinking, there's no way this could be a fake. Even the design decisions line up with the choices finally settled on in Pikmin 3. With most of the new types sporting unique overall body shapes to set them apart from the classic 5 types and perhaps to help colorblind players while keeping the same Pikmin-styled magic. The Rock and Wing Pikmin, who are also depicted here in an earlier form, are cut from this same cloth. It's really not hard to imagine these are the rejected brothers and sisters of the now beloved Rock and Winged Pikmin. Even if this book was just an elaborate fake, which I think is really unlikely, the designs are so good and so on point with Pikmin that it's just absolutely worth covering anyway. And if it's real, which I suspect there's a good chance it is, there's a lot it can tell us about Pikmin 4. We first heard about Pikmin 4's early development in 2015, and this book is supposedly from 2014. If this is the case, Pikmin 4's development was public only a year after this book was supposedly created, and it may have started even earlier, so the ideas were likely at least a little fresh in the minds of the creators. Whatever Pikmin types do make it, these types were directly influential on, and they were probably themselves at least considered in the creation process. Not only that, these types show us what design space Pikmin can be designed to occupy. Even if unused, these types all represent ideas the team was once willing to try with Pikmin. And, given what we know of the history of Pikmin types, these types could have been greatly adapted for use in the upcoming title. Wing Pikmin were once orange instead of pink, for example, and this text shows us some different abilities they had before their current flight, and purple Pikmin were once black Pikmin and may have even had a proper immunity in the game that was eventually phased out. Whenever we do see the types of Pikmin 4, looking back at this concept art can help us understand how exactly those types were designed and what ideas were scrapped from Pikmin 3 and revisited in Pikmin 4. Now, we're going to take a look at each type and break them down. We're going to look at their color, their function, and their description, then chat about why it was or wasn't used in Pikmin 3, and if it could potentially be revisited in Pikmin 4. As far as the translation goes, I'm going to be using a combination of the text found on Wikipedia and the translation attached to the original post showing them off. These will be available in the description. To begin, I'm going to start with the 2 types we actually got in Pikmin 3, Rock Pikmin and Winged Pikmin. Let's start with Rock. These Rock Pikmin designs differ a little from the final, and from what I can tell, they're listed here as gray Pikmin. This lines up with how they're depicted in Pikmin Bloom, where they're grown from gray seeds. They're described as having a hard body. This is precisely what role they have in the final game, though more vague as it probably hadn't been as fleshed out at the time. Obviously, these sturdy guys were eventually chosen for Pikmin 3, and they had some redesign work done since this art. I think there's a good chance they return for Pikmin 4, but it hinges on whether or not the other already used types outside of the primary 3 return, and the same is true for our next Pikmin type, the Winged Pikmin. Winged Pikmin are not given any text description here, but they are accompanied by a drawing where they're shown to be jumping off cliffs. Perhaps these Pikmin were not originally able to always fly and were partially grounded, instead using their wings to leap over hazards and walls. Not gonna lie, when I look at this art, I see these Pikmin as pink rather than orange as they supposedly would have been at this point in development, though Wikipedia claims that they are orange here. Perhaps it's a trick of the light. Unfortunately, the photograph we have seems to have some sort of color filter or natural light that changes the colors of everything in it, so I'm just going to trust that these are orange. Obviously, the Winged Pikmin did make their way into Pikmin 3, but the idea of a Pikmin that leaps over hazards hasn't made it into any game, nor has an orange Pikmin. While I think the core gameplay of throwing Pikmin and the existence of Winged Pikmin make cliff jumpers like these obsolete, I think, given the new perspective, should Winged Pikmin not return in Pikmin 4, there definitely is space for a type with this property to be explored. And of course, orange Pikmin don't exist yet, we could easily see a new type take up that color. Alright, next we're going to move on to the most popular and arguably most interesting Pikmin type from this book, the lanky green Pikmin. This green bean-styled green Pikmin is described as parasitic, having some skill in farming, and having the ability to be connected together to build a bridge. These guys have become quite popular in the community since they first graced the internet, and they've spawned tons of fan art. My collaborator on this video, B0Y, has made tons of clay models of these guys. He's made the remainder of these concept art types too, but these green guys have a very special place in our heart. perhaps because we've been dreaming of a lanky green Pikmin parasite for years, given the existence of bulbmin. In fact, aside from hairy Cyan Pikmin immune to the cold, these are probably the most commonly mentioned Pikmin type in the community. I think a green Pikmin type is an inevitability should the series continue forward. We're running out of colors too fast to ignore it. I think the green Pikmin, however, weren't used in 3 for a couple of different reasons. First, they seem to have a bit of an identity crisis regarding their function. The devs clearly really liked their design, but I don't think they were entirely sure of how to use them. Being parasitic is really cool, but it would be very difficult to pull off without turning into an overpowered system where you can capture tons of enemies. Even if parasitically rooting big enemies failed to get them under your control due to their hunger, but controlling small enemies worked, it's more than a little creepy and could be a turn-off for some players. It makes the Pikmin more ethically dubious than they've ever been. They're currently firmly cute and good with some underlying dark undertones, but if they willingly hijack the nervous systems of living beings at the player's command, that's definitely not so good anymore. Practically speaking, it also presents the problem of making every affectable enemy type have to function now as a playable unit, and the whole system opens rabbit holes upon rabbit holes. A system like this proved it could work as the core mechanic of a game in Super Mario Odyssey, but Pikmin can't afford to be built around a mechanic like that. Making this a primary solution to most of the game's problems sidelines all other Pikmin types really badly. I wonder if the system actually influenced the development of Mario Odyssey, since the capture system works great there, but just wouldn't fit well into the Pikmin framework. If bulbmin were originally intended to Pikmin 3, perhaps these guys were tied into their creation. Maybe this is why, in its current state, bulbmin aren't in Pikmin 3 at all. When these guys were scrapped, their bestial forms may have went with them. In the art, there's several drawings of bulbmin, including a spotty bullbear bulbmin being used as a boat for Olimar's non-swimming Pikmin. Realizing the can of worms open, the devs decided to shelve the idea until further notice. Even moving past the idea of these green guys being Parasiticus Pikminicus is a little hard to do given the implications already set in stone by Pikmin 2. That being said, I think that's what the designers were attempting to do when giving them the ability to chain together into bridges and to do farming, whatever that may entail. Did this farming ability have something to do with an early form of fruit in Pikmin 3? I'm going to take a guess and say that farming maybe just means that they're easy to create since they would be expendable and thus are farmable or something to that nature. Or perhaps the opposite is true. They're rarer, can be used to gate progression, and operate like the candy pop bud types of Pikmin 2. I don't know, I didn't design the type, but what I can speculate about is the more clear ability, the ability to build bridges. I think that using these types to build essentially vine bridges made up of their component Pikmin across gaps is not only a great idea, but an idea we've actually seen in-game already. I had a conversation with Davagato about this a while back, and we were curious if this was the beginning of the piece-by-piece bridge-making mechanic that is in the final release of Pikmin 3, where Pikmin go get individual pieces and build a bridge automatically. This could have been the onset of the wing Pikmin gates as well, gates that could be opened only if you had a number of Pikmin still on you, and they're not permanently open. These are both mechanics with a potential for soft locking, and they're both things that could certainly spice up gameplay if done well. However, the wing Pikmin made it into the game and the green Pikmin did not. I think of all the types in this video, the green Pikmin are one of the most likely to return in Pikmin 4. Though I do think they are certainly knocked down a bit by the Parasiticus Pikminicus / bulbmin implications, there's no reason a lanky Greenbean Pikmin and a green Parasite Pikmin can't exist in the same world, especially if the Parasite Pikmin is never seen because of the way it operates outside of infesting a host creature. I think adding a new green type, whether these guys or another type entirely, actually is really good for the developers because it gives them a little extra design real estate to make new types, since there would technically be 2 green Pikmin types, and let's be honest, there's only a finite amount of colors they can use. Even if we get a new Pikmin game every 10 years, they're still going to run out at some point. Frankly, if they wanted 2 green Pikmin types, these guys could be a more lime green, Parasite Pikmin could be a darker green, it really doesn't matter. The point is using as much design real estate as possible to make the Pikmin distinct while also keeping green as an available color is a really good choice. If it really is the case that these guys are coming back in Pikmin 4, I think their bridge making ability is their core utility in this title. If the game is more vertical, these guys can act as a climbing hook like the Pikmin from Olimar's Recovery in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. They can let you scale upwards, but could also build horizontal bridges. If the title's exploration is a little more sandbox, they could do what climbing did to Breath of the Wild to Pikmin. I think it could be an interesting mechanic depending on how it's used. Of all these types, these definitely have my vote to be made a reality for Pikmin 4, provided they aren't the parasite kind. The next type we're going to talk about is the rather underrated Carapace Pikmin. Looking at them, they're a little maroon or brown fellow with a large black dome on their head and no arms. These guys are described in the book only as carapace, which means they have a tough shell like a crustacean. To me, these guys scream out as being a divergent idea from the same spark that created rock Pikmin. While upright, they can't be crushed because of their heads, and they deal dramatic bludgeoning damage when thrown because of their carapace as well. However, they have no arms in their design, perhaps they cannot carry things back, or perhaps this is a mere artistic choice here. I think these guys didn't make it into Pikmin 3 because of the overlap they have with rock Pikmin. Though these guys certainly could make it into future games on their design alone, which is quite striking, I can't think of any abilities for them the rock Pikmin doesn't already have. And on top of that, not having arms is probably a huge drawback since they likely couldn't bring stuff back to an onion then. I think with some revisions and a really cool ability attached, these guys could make it into Pikmin 4, but it's probably unlikely. Still, I think their striking design, eyes on top of their armored head, is definitely amazing, and I would not mind seeing them return. The next type is this concept art's version of pink Pikmin. These guys are tiny and described as having a small body. They also don't seem to have arms and are deliberately described as being unable to attach themselves to enemies, a weakness that rock Pikmin inherited. The book says they're easy to make a lot of, not very strong, and they're able to stick to the wall and walk. Thinking about it, this type seems like a lot of fun. They're light, able to climb walls, and have a completely different combat style. They're also quite plentiful. They're kind of like the Deku seeds of the Pikmin world. In many ways, they're equal and opposite to the rock Pikmin. These seed-shaped guys were probably obsolete in Pikmin 3 because the game didn't end up being as vertical as the devs originally planned. A lot of content we know was around for a while includes things with much potential for verticality, including the plant slide used in the tropical forest area, a much higher captain throw, and, now between these guys, the green Pikmin, and the early orange wing Pikmin, multiple new ways up and down ledges. Should Pikmin 4 have more verticality, this would be a perfect way to do it. Imagine getting a jetpack upgrade for your leader like Olimar has in Hey Pikmin, an idea I liberally borrowed from Rising Piktuber Flamesy. This leader could go up ledges where other Pikmin couldn't follow, but these little guys could stick to the wall and walk up after you, perhaps accompanied by wing Pikmin. Our modern-day wing Pikmin have taken the role of being the pink Pikmin, but maybe, since the wing Pikmin were originally intended to be orange, these guys could now be orange, making a little trade. Either way, I'd love to see these seed-like baby carrot men make it in. The next type to talk about is the stocky brown Pikmin. These guys sport what looks like a beard plus a large body. They're described as strong, difficult to increase with 10 pellets making just 1 seed, and as having a fast construction speed. These hairy, bearded little Samsons resemble purple Pikmin in both ability and design, and they look like they were intended to be a redesigned balanced version of the guys that could be produced in Onion. They don't seem to have the overpowered combat abilities of the purples and were focused more on construction. Construction was probably a bigger thing in an earlier version of Pikmin 3, but it turned into the tile pot and bridge construction sections of Pikmin 3 as it stands now. I think these guys didn't make it because they're simply a rehash of purples, and there are better ways to solve the purple balancing problem than to get rid of purples and replace them with a new set of purples. I think purples, for example, could have received all of these changes and still been purples without any retcons. For example, we never built purples from onions before. If we got an onion for purples, it would make so much sense to have 10 pellets make 1 seed. If there was a construction mechanic, perhaps purples are perfect for it. They're already naturally stronger. While I think these guys are probably the least likely to make it as a new type in Pikmin 4, especially if all previous types return, the idea of revisiting a construction mechanic is definitely not out of the question. Lifting objects and moving them to get across to new places, like a Zelda block puzzle, or like the rot in Kenna Bridge of Spirits, is not at all a bad new mechanic, especially when exploring areas which are potentially more vertical than ever before. The next type is the fuzzy black Pikmin. This round, furball-like guy is a shadowy mass described as a species that has evolved to adapt to cold climates. The idea of a hairy Cyan Pikmin resistant to cold is very popular in the community, as I mentioned before, and these guys I think are just a league above that concept. They're squishy, cartoonish, furry, and cuddly, and they look like the soot sprites from My Neighbor Totoro. They feel perfect for being resistant to extreme cold and are just funny little guys. These guys probably weren't included because they didn't have anything particularly special that would have wowed the developers into wanting to include them into Pikmin 3, minus their texture and the ability to have a new elemental hazard. However, I think they still partially made it into the game. The texture of the enemy Phosphats and the Behemoth Phosphat are hairy and done in a way that could have easily been used to render these Pikmin types. In addition, a group of us Pikfluencers had a realization and call in Wiggleman's Discord server. The ink hazard in Pikmin 3 vaguely resembles these guys, perhaps made out of a remnant cold hazard or something to that effect. While they aren't in the game, it seems their shadow still remains. These guys are my #1 pick to make it into the 4th entry in the series, given their striking and adorable cartoon design. The fact that I've always wanted to see a black Pikmin, given purple Pikmin never filled that role, also adds to it. I and so many other Pikmin fans would love to see a cold elemental hazard that has its own set of rules and challenges attached. However, the fact that they don't have too much to them outside of this does perhaps dampen their appeal, but it certainly doesn't make them out for the count. They're unlikely to be overpowered, and in this case, simple might really be the answer. One small idea, a cold hazard, could echo throughout the entire game. Before we move on to our final 2 Pikmin types, I'd like to take a detour and look at this candy pop-like onion depicted on the bottom left. Perhaps we may see, as a rework to onions in the game, a redesign that uses this onion growth functionality, making acquiring every Pikmin onion a collectathon-style puzzle. Maybe it could tie into why the Master Onion is called the Pikmin 3-style onion in bloom. No idea, but it could be a fun shake-up if it were the case. Alright, now that we're done sidetracking, let's get on to the last 2 types. These are, in many ways, the most interesting types in this set, so let's talk about them. For our penultimate Pikmin type, we have the light blue/cyan Pikmin. These guys are gooey blob-like Pikmin described as moving slowly and fixing structures with mucus. I can assume this ability made its way into the tile-based bridge building and pot repair mechanics in the final game, something I again talked about with Davogado when this art first surfaced. The thing is, that's not what's striking to me. Their design is. By being a cyan or light blue goo being, it already makes itself seem a little similar to an infamous class of Pikmin enemies, the Wraiths, specifically the Water Wraith. And the shape itself resembles several depictions of the Umibozu legend that the Wraiths may have been based on. This is of course in reference to Davogado's famous Pikmin theory, the Umibozu theory. Are these Wraith Pikmin? And what does it mean if they are? It's a little chilling to think about. I think these guys were once again absorbed into the bridge building mechanic of Pikmin 3 that probably made them obsolete, like several of the other types. However, the idea of a mucusy, slow-moving Pikmin type is something that could certainly be adapted. They could absorb perhaps a paint or acid hazard and be useful in that regard, or something like that. I think their design is definitely striking enough to return in Pikmin 4, and it's broad enough that it could fill roughly any niche the devs need it to do. Squeezing through a tight space? These guys can work. Slowing down enemies? You've got it. I think these have a really good shot to make it in, even if they weren't in Pikmin 3. And if they were to return, perhaps these Wraith-like Pikmin could have some major tie-in to the Wraith plot and finally help partially explain where these creatures came from. We now move on to our final Pikmin type from the list, and one of my favorites. These orange Pikmin appear like ghost and glow, and they're depicted following a leader in the rain. Perhaps these Pikmin only appeared on rainy days or at night, and in these places they shed light on your squad. They're such a haunting idea. Are they actually ghosts? Your fallen Pikmin companions back to help you, even after death? Or are they just a spectral type, drifting in and out of the world not unlike the Honeywisp or the Wraiths? Are they in some way tied into the weather? Rain only had an aesthetic difference in Pikmin 3. Could it have once had a mechanical use? I think these guys didn't make it into Pikmin 3 as their appearance would have become a core mechanic of the game. However, I think, just like bulbmin, they could have served so excellently as a secret Pikmin type discovered towards the endgame, and this still remains true in Pikmin 4. I think these guys could absolutely return in 4, were it to have a night mode, or to have rain return, or just a spooky area in general. Their design is so striking. Would that they appear as ghastly phantoms in the rain, I think that they could leave a haunting impression on players when first discovered, perhaps as spirits in an enchanted grove. Perhaps they are even discovered in caves, should they return, lighting up the dark, essential to surviving when delving deeper. And that's it for this document for the unused concept art types from Pikmin 3. I think any or all of these types could return for Pikmin 4, but there's a good chance that none of them do. Maybe they're completely cast aside following Pikmin 3's development, but maybe they're all in consideration for Pikmin 4. But what do you think? Which ones do you like the best? Which types would you like to see return in Pikmin 4? Do you think any of them have a chance? Do you think all of them will make it? Do you think none of them will? Let me know in the comments below. Before we get going, I'd like to give a huge shout out to my friend B0Y for making this possible. As you've seen, his incredible figures have been shown throughout this video. If you could go follow him on Twitter and check out his Etsy, that would make me so happy. The links to these will be in the description below. I'd also like to let you know I have a Patreon. Long videos like this take a ton of time and effort to make, and if you'd like to see more of them, supporting there would be a wonderful way to make that happen. I'd like to give a shout out to my current 2 Patreons for supporting thus far. You've helped make this possible, so thank you. The link for this is in the description. Please check it out if you can. And even if you can't support on Patreon, if you have yet to subscribe, please do. I make weekly Pikmin videos and I stream Pikmin on Thursdays and Sundays at 8:30 EST, so please check it out if you are able. You can also join my Discord, the link for which is also in the description, where you can talk about Pikmin and catch me in call on occasion, and if nothing else, you can always just leave a like. Anyway, seriously, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm gonna stop rambling and end things here. My name is Vantage Emblem. I'm so excited for Pikmin 4. I'm so excited to see what new Pikmin types return. I hope you are too, and I'll see you real soon. Take care, everyone.